Guys, so today we are going to talk about grief. And we're not just talking about the grief that you experience when someone dies physically, we're talking about the grief that you experience when someone dies emotionally. It's very fascinating how the body responds to each one individually. And today we are going to talk about that in 20 minutes or less. Stay tuned. Hey, so let's talk about grief. Especially with the pandemic and so many people dying untimely deaths. Grief has been something that has been in the forefront of people's minds and things that they have and what they have experienced very often these past 2 years. But what I deal with a lot in my own private practice with clients is just not the grief that comes from when people physically die. It's the grief that people experience when someone emotionally dies. Because grief in itself is any time an emotional bond is broken between you and a person, place, or thing, right? So what does that mean? That means if you have an emotional bond, an emotional connection to a goal, an emotional bond, an emotional connection to this vision that you have for your life or your marriage or your kids. If you had an emotional bond with a person, anytime the bond is broken, your body experiences grief. And your body does not know the difference between grieving someone who died physically and grieving someone who died emotionally. It feels exactly the same. How interesting is that? And the reason why many of my clients who I help and work with experience grief that comes from emotional death is because they have people in their lives, whether it was family members, friends, who were really, really important to them. But unfortunately, something happened. A bond or a connection was broken. And so they are currently grieving the loss of someone who is still alive. Many people, for example, don't talk about how hard friendship breakups are. Friendship breakups, I don't know if you've ever had to break up with a friend. I have. It is just as hard as breaking up with a boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse. Because you grieve, right? You're saddened, you're angry. You're in denial, like, did that just happen? Like, is this person really like not my friend anymore? Like, all these memories we had, like, is this really happening? Because your body doesn't know the difference between physical death and emotional death. And here we go with another example that I work with a lot of people with. You had an image, a vision of who your mom should have been, dad should have been, spouse should have been, right? You had a vision, an image, a dream of what this relationship was supposed to be like, and it's not turning out that way. And I have to work on you with adjusting the expectations of a person that you have. And in order to adjust these expectations, you have to let this dream, this vision, these hopes that you had die. Why is that, Crystal? Thank you for asking. I want to help you. Your expectations of people are often based on what you think they should be. What type of mom they should be, what type of dad they should be, what type of husband, what type of wife, what type of friend they should be. You have it in your mind, you get these expectations maybe from what you see in other parents, what you see in other spouses, what you see in other friendships, and you take all of this information from what you've seen on TV, movies, in real life, in books. You compile it all together and you say, here friend, here mom, here dad, here spouse, here partner, here daughter, here son, here. These are all of the expectations that I have of you. Do it. And sometimes we don't even tell the people in our lives what these expectations are. We just get mad when they don't do what we expect. Right? It's like they don't even know. Right? But the biggest issue with packaging up your expectations from all of these different places is because your expectations is based on what you've seen from other people. But you don't know if this person that you're placing these expectations on can even do what you're expecting them to do. And sometimes we're setting them up for failure. When you married him, you knew he was fine working a 9-to-5. Now that all your friends and their husbands are entrepreneurs, you now want to say, you fine with that 9-to-5? You need to be an entrepreneur. Get a business. Life is so... You knew he was fine with the 9-to-5 when you married him. Now you want to change the expectation. No, that's not fair. He's not an entrepreneur. He's a 9-to-5er, and that's okay. And you're going to have to be okay with it too. But ultimately, our expectations of people should not be based on, should not just be based, let me say just be based, should just not be based on what we want from them. It should largely be based on what they've shown us they can do. When you're pulling expectations from influences around you, you're pulling these expectations with the lack of knowledge of what it took for that person to even have that skill, that lifestyle. And you just like, here, friend, here, mom, here, dad, here, do that. This is what you need to do. Adjust your expectations. And if you're not able to adjust your expectations, you're going to have a serious conversation with yourself and the other person in your life. Because it is true, there are some expectations that we have that should be okay to place on someone. Someone being kind to you should be a reasonable expectation. But are they kind? If they're not genuinely a kind person, then we should not expect them to be kind. we have to reposition them in our life. You wanting them to be kind will not make them kind. They have to decide that you are worthy of kindness. Maybe they don't think you're worthy. And what happens when you have to adjust your expectations of people, when you have to reposition people in your life, you have to let go of the dreams, the visions, the hopes, the love, the connection, the bond that you created with you're gonna have to let go of the emotional bond. Cut. Because what happens is when you have to adjust your expectations, when you have to reposition people in your life, you have to let go of the hopes and dreams and visions you had with that person. You had with those expectations. Because only if, then everything would be better. If she would just, those dreams, those hopes, they have to die. And even though these hopes and dreams aren't a living thing, there is still an emotional connection tied to them. And you have to break that emotional connection. And when you break that emotional connection in order to adjust your expectations, you will grieve the loss of someone, something, even though they're still alive. Your brain doesn't know the difference between the two. Will you be sad? Yes. Will you be angry? Probably so, because you may be like, all they had to do was. And I say to you, if it was only that simple. They're not meeting your expectations. And you have to ask yourself, are they not meeting my expectation because they can't or because they don't want to? If they don't want to, reposition them immediately. Nothing's going to change. If they're not meeting your expectation because they don't know how to, if they want to learn, teach them. If they don't want to learn, you may want to consider repositioning them too. But everybody's situation is different. Sometimes it's not easy to reposition people. Sometimes you cannot reposition people. Adjust your expectations. Grieve the loss of what you wanted. Settle in what you have to accept. And try your best to build a life from that. I hope this helps. Have an absolutely amazing day. Grieving is okay. You'll get through it. Push through. Go through the process. Don't stuff it. I hope you have an amazing day. Talk to you soon.